When you create a bar graph, you are displaying a single number representing each category. The height of each bar will represent that number. It could be the frequency or the count, or it could be the percentage or that relative frequency. On a bar graph, each bar has to have the same width. Otherwise, it's going to be misleading and violate what's called the area principle. It's important that the areas are proportional to the frequency of each category. You can draw a bar on a bar graph either vertically or horizontally, and that would depend ultimately on how much space you had to show your graph in whatever publication in a way that looks visually appealing. What's good about a bar graph is that they are better for making comparisons of the sizes of categories. Also, if there's a natural ordering of the variable, such as how much education a person has, this can be displayed on that horizontal axis or the vertical if you're showing these the other way. And you cannot display that easily in a pie chart. Pie charts also are limited because they only allow you to show how something is a part of a whole. And a bar graph is going to be able to show any type of distribution. You don't necessarily have to be looking at the parts of a whole. So even though they both show the distribution of a categorical variable, the pie chart usually displays the percentage for each category. And it only works if you have all of the categories so that the percentages add up to 100. Whereas in a bar graph, you can show an entire distribution, but you can also show just a few categories. The bar graph is going to allow you to compare the size of categories that are not necessarily parts of one whole. If you have one number to represent each category, then you'll be able to create a bar graph. We can look here at the level of taxation in 8 democratic nations by gross domestic product that the country takes in taxes. So here we see that France has the highest tax revenue as percent of gross domestic product, GDP. A pie chart here would not make sense because we're not looking at how each of these countries contributes to some whole. We're simply comparing the rate for each of these countries. In a 2014 report, the Tax Foundation analyzed data on tax revenue for 2011 for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The U.S. tax revenue was comprised of individual income tax at 37.1%, social insurance tax, that's your Medicare, your Social Security, that sort of thing, at 22.8%, a consumption tax at 18.3%, that's your sales tax, property tax at 12.4%, and a corporate income tax of 9.4%. So we could create a bar graph to show that kind of data because it would allow us to compare the size of each category. But you also could show that data in a pie chart because we are looking at how just within the United States all of the tax revenue is divided. But now if we wanted to compare the tax revenue for the United States to the average for these other countries, then we would not make a pie chart. Pie charts are not good for comparisons. Bar charts or bar graphs, on the other hand, you can easily make what's called a side-by-side bar graph. So here you can take a look at all of those categories that I mentioned, the type of taxation for the United States versus the average of all of those other countries. So now we can see that the United States does rely more heavily on individual income tax than other countries, and consumption tax is much higher than it is in the United States.